Yeah, it's Amanda here from Lolli Lulu Crafts, and today we are making a card using this gorgeous Peruvian Lily Build-A-Flower stamp and die set from Altenew, and I also have a couple of the builder stencils. Now this has been kindly supplied to me from Altenew. I approached them and asked if they might sponsor a video, and they kindly agreed, and I was able to choose some items, and I chose this beautiful set Build-A-Flower because I really love the Build-A-Flower sets anyway, and I thought this Peruvian Lily was absolutely stunning, and I was absolutely fascinated by these builder stencils, so I chose those as well. Now the plan, as I have done on previous Altenew stamp videos, is to show how the layers will put together, and also how we can multi-stamp the images really easily. So I'm going to be using my stamp platform, which when I'm doing multiples of the same flower, I do find that much easier to use that, because you don't have to reposition your layers each time. Just to say though, if you don't have a stamp platform, that doesn't mean that you can't do this. It is still perfectly easy to stamp the flowers. It just means you have to line up each layer individually for each flower. So on the whole, your Altenew stamps are what you call layering stamps, and this means that to create, say in this case, a single flower, you have a number of layers that you stamp over each other according to the stamp guide to create that single image. So starting with layer 1, I'm positioning that in the corner of my stamp platform in order that I can stamp a flower in each corner of my piece of card. I've lined my stamp to match the image on the layering guide. I find that simpler, so that when you come to the subsequent layers you can see more easily how to line it up. And then using crimson ink from Altenew, I am inking the first layer. Now what you want to do is start with your palest colour first and then work up to your darkest colour. Now as you can see, the first layer that I'm doing on this particular flower is pretty vibrant already, but there are darker colours in the range and within other ranges as well within Altenew, so you can easily find the next colour up. I really wanted to go for a lovely vibrant red flower, and I think that has come out absolutely beautiful. So as I said, I'm going to be stamping 4 flowers for this card, so all I'm doing is moving the magnets, changing the card around to the next corner, keeping that card right in the corner each time, so that when you do the subsequent layers you know the exact position, and then I'm stamping again the first layer in the crimson. So then, having turned the card again, I'm going to stamp again the first layer, but this time I'm going to be using rose quartz, as I want to do 2 flowers in the red tones and 2 in sort of purpley pink tones. So now we're on to layer 2, and again referring to the layering guide, you'll see that there are little red marks on this one, and it's showing you where you need to match up the layer 2 onto the layer that you've already stamped, layer 1. Now normally I would just start with the last layer that I had just stamped, however that was a very pale layer, and I find it's much easier to line things up if you've got the option on the darker images, because you can see those layer 1 through layer 2. So once you're happy you've lined up all the elements that you need to and that you like the position of it, collect your stamp onto the lid of your stamp platform and ink up. For this one I am using ruby red, and then just stamping that down, and you can see what a stunning effect those layering stamps have. But as I did with layer 1, I am simply moving the card around to the next corner. I'm not altering the position of layer 2 stamp, and then I'm just inking it up and stamping each flower in turn. For my pinky purple flower, for layer 2 I am using midnight violet. So now we're moving on to layer 3. So again, looking at our stamp guide and then onto the actual stamps, you can identify which is layer 3, then positioning that onto the stamp. This one is actually pretty easy to position because you've got that little V in the center there and then the curve round the edge there. So just pop that down, pick it up onto your lid of your stamp platform, and as before, ink and stamp each flower in turn. And for this layer, for the purple, I'm using Deep Iris, and for the red, I'm using Velvet. Now onto layer 4, and here we're starting on the center of the flower, so we want to go back to our pale colors now and work our way back to dark again. So with this layer, you can see the lines on the layering guide there, but also what you can see pretty much is that there is a gap in the middle of the flower, and that's what you're trying to fill. So you want the V to match up, you want that line at the bottom to match up, but I also found that you want those little spiky bits to match up as well. So once you're happy, collect the stamp onto the lid of your stamp platform, ink it up. For this one I am using buttercream because I'm going for a yellow center, and I want to obviously start with the palest color and then working our way darker. And you can see here the finished stamp for that layer, and it's just a perfect match into that gap, so we know it's going to work beautifully for each of our flowers. So I'm going to continue around as before, but for my lilac flowers I am going to go for soft lilac. I really wanted to follow a photograph I saw of the Peruvian lilies in the purples, and it had a much smaller yellow center. Now on to layer 5, the second layer of the center of our flower, and it's again quite a simple one, just matching up that little V and the bottom part of the curve there. And then once you're happy, again as before, collect the stamp onto your stamp platform and then stamp it. For this layer I am using Citrus Burst across all 4 flowers, and although the soft lilac does slightly change the yellow colour, once you get the other layers it will be fine. So now on to layer 6. This is the next darkest colour of the centre of our flower. Again, not too difficult to line up, just using the little V there as a guide and the bottom part of our stamp. Then for this layer I am using Warm Sunshine on the red flowers. I think that's a really nice colour for this. It's just softly increasing the depth. And then for the purple flowers I'm actually going slightly different with Maple Yellow. Now you may have noticed with the first layer of the yellow that the lilac colour that was showing through slightly the yellow and slightly changing it. You'll notice firstly that as the colours have dried that's got better, but also as we layer it up that will become less and less obvious. As long as you use a pale colour as that where the lilac is, it will work just fine. So now on to the 7th layer, and this is the final layer of the main flower, and you just need to line up that little bottom piece, so not too difficult to do. So just line it up. Once you're happy, pick it up with your stamp platform lid and then ink it. For this I'm using Warm Sunshine. Double stamped as it was just a little paler than I wanted, but I didn't want to go up a colour. For my red flowers I'm using a slightly darker tone of Sun Kissed, which I also double stamped because again I liked the colour tone, I just wasn't happy with the depth for that centre. I wanted it a little darker. So now the main layers of the flower are done, it's time to add the spotty bits to it, and there's no real guide as to where to position those. I think it's really kind of up to you and just using your common sense. Clearly it fits into that sort of yellow area. So I've been using photos of real Peruvian lilies as my guide for colours, and I saw that on the red one that the sort of spotty parts were a more brownier tone, so I've actually used Mocha for my red flower here, and for my purple flower I used Purple Wine because again it was a more burgundy tone. I noticed these spots were on the purpley flowers, so I really wanted to emulate that. So the next layer we want to do is the little stamens, And to position those, I use just the image on the back of the packaging, and you'll see that in the bottom flower there, the petal, there's like a little V. So I positioned the bottom part of the stamen into the V, and then I just wriggled those around until I was happy with the position of them. Once I was happy, I picked it up on the lid and I stamped it, for this time using espresso. I felt that it needed something quite strong in the center to overlay all the layers that we've got below. I did try a slightly paler color on the lilac flower, it just didn't work. So the final layer is the little seeds on the stamens here, and for this I actually used jet black. Again, I wanted it to really stand out against the background of the flower layers. There they are, all complete, and I think they look absolutely gorgeous. I have to say I'm really pleased with the red ones, and I do love the lilac ones as well, but I do think the red ones are probably my favourite of the two colours. So next I want to do some leaves, and there are 3 layers to the leaf, and it's pretty simple to do. And again, as before, I've got a square piece of card, and I'm just doing my layer, turning the card, and then re-stamping each of the first layers till I have 4 leaves. For this layer I'm doing parrot and also frayed leaf. I'm actually going to have a second piece of cardstock where I will do some more. So for layer 2, and in fact with layer 3 as well, you just want to line up that pointy end and the other pointy end, so you basically are just lining up those 2 ends. Really simple and quick to do. Just pop it on and then pick it up and stamp. And over the frayed leaf I'm doing forest glade, and over parrot I am doing olive. And then the final layer, again just lining up the 2 pointy bits. Very simple to do. Pick it up and stamp. And for the faded leaf one I'm using evergreen, and for our parrot leaf I am using moss. And there they are, all completed. And as I said, I've got a few more on another sheet as well, but that is all our stamping done. So now it's time to die cut these out. So the Peruvian Lily Builder flower set comes with dies. So first I'm going to cut out my flowers. Now I'm using my Sizzix here, and I have a magnetic platform, so I don't need to use any tape, but if you don't have a magnetic platform I would definitely recommend taping these into position so that they don't move. But just line it up and then pop it through your machine and die cut them out. So there are all the flowers done. I think they look absolutely stunning. I really like them die cut out. And now I am going to do all of the leaves. So again, as before, I'm just using my magnetic platform, positioning the die over the stamped area and putting it through the machine to die cut it. Okay, so that's all our flowers and leaves die cut out, and I think they look absolutely gorgeous. So now it's time to move on to making my background, and for that I wanted to use one of these 2 stencils. So I had a little play with the cube and the Weave Builder stencil and different colours, combinations, etc. to see what would work. And initially I thought I would be using the cube, but after some playing around with it, although I absolutely love it, I just didn't feel it was right for the flowers for what I had in mind at that time. So actually I'm going to go for the weave design. So I've started out with a piece of cardstock that's actually quite a lot bigger than my stencil, but I am going to do a repeat, and I have taped it down to my table to ensure that it does not move. And next I taped the stencil to the card. So for this I'm going to be using frayed leaf and my blender tool. Now this is actually a really simple stencil to use. It looks a lot more complicated than you might think. So in order to help yourself, what you want to do is make sure you position your stencil correctly onto the mat. It's not that it's wrong to do it any other way, it just makes it easier for the next step. So what you'll see is there are some vertical lines. They're part of the little L shapes on the left hand side, but they obviously have come to the edge and they haven't completed, so you'll see there's just a row of little vertical lines. Make sure they are vertical and that they are on the left hand side. Then do your inking. For this part I am using my frayed leaf, and I'm doing it at a sort of medium, sort of light to medium sort of coverage. So having completed that first inking, I'm going to take the mask off and I'm going to reposition it to do the repeat before I do the next step to create the weave. So all you need to do when you are doing a repeat is just find the last layer of the design and match it up to the holes that you've got for the next part, and then just stick it down, and then you'll know it's in exactly the right position. Then when you ink it, just be careful not to over ink the area that you've already inked and make it too dark. Once you've finished inking that section, just peel your mask off. You want to clean the layer of your mask where you've been inking, because you are going to flip this over, so you want to make sure there is no ink on the surface of the mask. So next, whether you've done the repeat or not, just position it back as it was and then literally just flip it over onto itself, and then you can line it up. Just fiddle around, you'll see there, you just line it up as it was before, and you will see that now the vertical lines are on the right hand side. You can position it pretty much exactly as it was, and you will find that the mask has automatically found the position where the stencil holes are creating that weave pattern. You can actually see it as you are looking through the mask here, because my ink is just dark enough to show through. So the holes now are in a different position, and all you're going to do is ink with, say, a different colour, or in my case I'm going to use the same colour, but I'm going to do it a lot paler. So once I've finished with this part, I am then going to take the mask as I did before and move it up the card and do exactly the same on the upper layer. So you can, and there it is done. I think it looks so effective, and as you saw, it's actually really easy to do. It's simply a case of making sure you understand where the position of the mask is to start with, so that then when you get to the second part of it, you can easily flip it over and have it mirrored by using the reverse side. So I've got an A5 card base, and I'm just positioning that onto my background piece here, and I'm marking top and bottom because it's the right width, it's just obviously not the right height. So then I'm going to cut the top and bottom so that it matches my A5 card. Next, I took this gorgeous lime cardstock and I cut a couple of strips off the side, which are the same length as the A5 card, and then I just stuck those down each side on the back of my background that we created with the stencil, just to create like a little border down each side, and just to accent that when we put it onto our card base. Having done both sides, I want to stick this to the front of the card, so I use my Cosmic Shimmer on the two outside pieces, but I used my Pin Flare glue gel in the centre because that was slightly dipped, so it just needed a little something with a bit more substance so that it would not dip the background piece that we've created. Next, I cut a piece of the lime cardstock to go on the inside of my card. One, I just think it adds a bit of interest to the inside of the card rather than it being just a plain white, but also it does give that extra stability to the back because we have added quite a few layers to the front. So next, I am stamping a sentiment to the inside using the Garden Hydrangea set and jet black ink. So now back to the front of the card, I am using the Altenew Happy Birthday die and some of the lime green cardstock, and I am cutting out the Happy Birthday sentiment. Now this is quite thick cardstock, so I ran it through a couple of times and then I found it cut through beautifully. You can see it's just popping out so easily there. Just be careful of these little bits in the middle here, not because they don't cut, but just because they are sort of going to catch around some of those other little bits of the letters, so just be careful when you pull them out. But otherwise, as you can see, that is absolutely stunning. So the next step that I usually do when I'm doing cards like this is I take all my elements and I just begin to position them onto the card and just fiddle around until I find a design that I'm happy with. I have a general idea what I have in mind, but sometimes you find that once you actually put the pieces down on the card that things change, so I always like to do this step just to be sure before I absolutely glue things down. Once I'm happy, I start putting down things as I can without moving stuff. If I'm going to have to move things, then what I would do is take a photo of it with my phone, just so I have a record of exactly how I position things, because it's so easy to forget. So what I'm starting off with here is I'm putting some Cosmic Shimmer adhesive on a piece of scratch card there, and then I'm going to take the Happy Birthday die and I'm going to just gently sort of dunk it, really is the best word, into the adhesive. I find this way I get adhesive on all the elements of the die, especially these more detailed dies. So next I'm going to be sticking down all my flowers and leaves. So what I want to do is sort of just shape the flowers and the leaves a little. So I'm just using my bone folder here and I'm just gently curving the card. This is Nina's Solar white cardstock, so it's got a nice weight to it, which means that you can curve it really well. So to make sure it keeps that curve, I'm using my pin flare glue gel, and I'm just putting that in the center because that's the bit where I want the height to stay. The petals are going to just naturally fall down because that's what we've done with the curve. And then I'm going to do exactly the same on the leaves, just put a gentle curve into them, add a bit of glue gel just at where I want the height, and then pop those underneath the petals and just gently press where the glue gel is, not too hard because we don't want to flatten out the glue gel, because you can actually do that, you can flatten it, but you don't want to do that here, we want to keep that height. And then I'm going to do exactly the same thing on all the flowers here and all the leaves. And there it is done, and you can see the dimension there. It's quite subtle, but it's still there and it does make a big difference. It looks really cool. So next we're going to add just a few clear sequins. I just think that looks really effective. It just adds a little, almost like a raindrops shimmer, even though I'm not actually putting them on the flower. Now here you'll see I'm using my pin flare glue gel again. It's very versatile and it's great. It really holds things down firmly, but it also dries completely clear, which is great for these crystal clear sequins. So I just added a couple of groups of 3 and then one single one. Just like to keep them in groups that are odd numbered. I think that personally that's generally considered to look better. On this occasion I didn't put them on the actual flowers, I just put them to the side, but you could put them on the flowers if you wanted to, it would look really effective. But on this occasion I wanted to use my glossy accents on the center little black seeds of the flowers, so I felt that it wasn't necessary to add the sequins as well. Okay, then one last thing that I decided to do is actually add some more layers to my Happy Birthday die. I thought, having finished the card, that it really would benefit from having just a little dimension on that. So I cut 2 more of the dies, I stuck those together, then I just used my Cosmic Shimmer adhesive and I just put a little adhesive onto the die cut that was on the card, and then I stuck the 2 that I'd already stuck together on top of the one that was on the card, and it married up really well, and I think that the finished result was really effective and it gave it some nice dimension. And I think with the rest of the card being very dimensional and 3D, it really just made that look too flat, and so having added those extra layers, it just really looked much better, I thought. So then I waited just about 15 minutes and the glossy accents were dry, and you can really see the effect now of those on the black sort of seeds parts of the stamen there of the flower. It really brings those to life and really lifts them off the page. It's incredible, and it just adds an even more dimension to the flowers. And there we have the inside all finished. I left that quite simple, but you could put another flower on the inside as well if you wanted. But there it is done, and you can see there the background with the cut flowers there. I just think it looks absolutely gorgeous. So pleased with the finished result. So I hope that you guys like this card as well. Don't forget to go on over to the blog post, link in the paragraph below this video, to see more photographs, links to the products used, etc. So it's definitely worth going on over there. to see all that. And finally, before I go, I would like to thank Altenew so much for sponsoring this video by sending me these beautiful products. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. So that's it for today. I hope you all have enjoyed this video, and I will see you again soon. Bye for now. Bye.
Who would have thought that we'd be intertwined and quite the same? We are the only game I wanna play today and tomorrow. This flower's blooming all the same. The grass gets greener every day in our place. I'll visit every Wednesday, our imaginary hey boy. We'll see you soon. Miles